don't have your project in yet, just make sure before you left that you've talked to someone about that. It's okay, we're gonna work it through, it's fine. But just in case you don't have your draft of your project in today, just make sure you talk to me or Mary Ann if you haven't already. If you have already, you're covered. So, all right, Cheralyn.
12 or 12:30?
12:30.
Great, okay. So let's talk about starting some vegetables. I'm really glad I don't have to wear a mask right now. I promise I won't breathe too hard in your direction.
That's why we have that right there.
Oh, I'm so grateful.
Suckers.
Like, you have no idea. I haven't been inside of a building without a mask on in like almost 2 years. It's weird. Okay, so starting vegetables warm versus cool. We are right in the middle. All the stuff from the warm season is crashing and burning, and all the cool season stuff is taking off. So we are good. Things that you can grow from fall to spring, my favorite seasons. Lettuce, broccoli, cabbage, onions. Generally speaking, if you wonder when things are growing, I always say fall through spring is leaf, roots, and shoots, and summer is for fruits. So just like we talked about before, all of that solar energy is needed to create the most expensive thing, which is a fruit. But in the fall and spring, there really isn't enough sunlight to create that many fruits unless they're small, plus it's too cold. So most of the things that grow in the summer, of course, are frost sensitive. So there's some things that go a couple of years, and we'll talk about that when we get into the plant families. But yeah, corn, melon, squash, peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, and okra, these also tend to be heavy feeders. They need a lot more fertilizer, they need a lot more light, they grow really fast, and they tend to be infested with pests. Because it's warmer, there's a lot of water around here, and water begets lots of life, and so that's why this is, to me, just so much easier to do. Okay, when to plant. So we have a Central Carolina planting calendar. One of our colleagues, Janelle, is actually working on another planting calendar where it's just, a couple of pages of just like a date grid, which is awesome. Hopefully that'll come out soon. But this is one that NC State puts out. Use this as a general guide, but right now in Southeast Durham, we are zone 7B, but quickly we are becoming zone 8 because the climate is changing, the earth is warming, and so we need to plan for that. So like you look at the one from like 1999, there's one that's just print with no pictures, and the dates are like different because that was, 21 years ago, 22 years ago. But there's, plant families, different ways you can plant, and then normally what we did, like for any of you that were at the event last weekend, actually kindly put together a QR code so that we didn't have to print this 18-page document, and people could just, take a picture of it, and then it would bring up the planting calendar. So feel free to help yourself to one of these if you like. Yeah, so pay attention to nighttime temperatures. That's really important, especially because right around, like it'll say April 15th is when you can put your tomatoes in. Not a good idea. April 15th, sometimes the soils are still pretty chilly, and it's better to wait a little bit on tomatoes anyway so that there's optimal growing conditions where the soil is warm, the night temperatures are warm. That's really the best way to do it in my opinion, which is why we have our plant sale the last weekend in April or the first weekend in May, because then you can just take the plants home and stick them in the ground. Whereas like mid-March, you can go to one of the big box stores and they're selling tomatoes, and that's not fair. That's not cool, because a lot of people don't know. You'll come across a lot of people who are just getting started gardening. Like for instance, at our spring sale, people were like, where's the cilantro? Like the cilantro is bolting and dying. Cilantro and basil have exactly opposite growing seasons. So, there's just a date and a time for everything, and, tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, they like it warm. So direct seed versus transplant. There's some things that you can do with both, and one prefers the other. So let me see, like direct seed and transplant. Direct seeds, of course, carrots. I mean, most root crops you're not going to do a start with. Beans, peas definitely. Mustards, you could actually do both with mustards. Peanuts, of course, direct seed. Peanuts are really fun to grow. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Potatoes, you're usually going to use seed potatoes, which is you find a potato you like. Not at the grocery store, because those are irradiated. Same thing with garlic and things. They're irradiated so they don't sprout. It doesn't hurt you. It just keeps the plant from sprouting so that it has a longer shelf life. And you don't know if those are like disease prone or not, and you don't want to bring fungus and stuff into your garden, so you want to buy certified seed potatoes. And what you would do is there's a potato, you cut it where there's a little eye sticking off, let it dry for a day or two, stick it in the ground, and you get a plant. But I got 6 cases of those seeds that you guys just went through. There were 4 packets of these potato seeds. And I was like, what? Potato seeds? So I'm going to try to grow them out next year as an experiment. It's the first time I've ever seen potato seeds, and this was new year. This is new for botanical interest this year, so we're going to try it. But you can buy certified potato seed all the time. If you grow disease-free potatoes and you really like them, you can actually save some potatoes in a cool, dark area and then redo them, you know, do them again the next year. But yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. Radish, rutabaga, anything that's considered like a root crop, you're not going to start those seeds ahead of time. Sweet corn and turnips. Transplants, any of the sweet potatoes, tomatoes, all of those, we're going to talk about them in a little bit. Most of those, the point of a transplant is to lengthen the amount of time that you're going to have fruit that you can eat. Or that you have a short period of time, like for instance, like in the case of like collards can overwinter if you cover them. So if you put seeds in, you have a real long growing season if you're going to overwinter them. So it doesn't matter if it takes a while for them to get to full size. Whereas like a broccoli and a cauliflower, they are not going to overwinter. They're Italian. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They like to be not cold, not frozen, but also not hot. And it takes some energy to get that beautiful flower bud. And you're not going to overwinter that. Like you have one season to do that. So it's kind of nice if you already have a start that's a month old and you stick that in the ground, and then you know it's only going to be another month and a half before you have that beautiful flower bud that you can pick. So, and then there's some that you can do both. So squash and melons, they don't really like their roots messed with. So whereas with a lot of transplants, you turn it out, you mess with the roots a little, get them spread out, shove it in the ground. These guys are real tender like that. They don't like that messed with. So you can either direct seed, or you can do your starts and then just take them out and stick them in the ground. They'll take care of it themselves. Lettuce and spinach, super easy to direct seed or start. Some people prefer to start spinach because it can be kind of finicky with soil temperatures as to whether or not it sprouts, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then onions and garlic you can do either way. Okay, open pollinated, so heirloom varieties. One of the benefits of this particular, I'm not promoting this particular company, there's lots of good seed companies, but in this package, a lot of these are open pollinated, and when open pollinated seeds, they come true to type. So your heirlooms, like if you save seeds for something and you plant it again the next year, you're going to get the same plant. Hybrids are directly cross-pollinated so that if you save seeds for the next generation, it may not come true to type. It may not have the same color or disease resistance that the original did. So before you guys go ripping into your seed packets, make sure to cut the sides of this because inside is a ton of information out of all those seeds that you just picked up. So cut them and open this up, and it has like recipes and folklore about your particular plant and things like that. So because hopefully you all love to vegetable garden, this is really nice because it tells you some extra information. A lot of these are heirlooms, some of them are hybrids. Hybrids are nice because you do get like the disease resistance is really helpful. I'll do hybrids for some kinds of cucumbers, squashes, things like that, because they're kind of buggy here in the summertime, but you can't really save seeds for them. And then another one, and we'll talk about it when we get to peppers, even though they're open pollinated and heirloom and they're self-fruitful, like peppers are self-fruitful, when I show you that pepper row today, I've got sweet, beautiful peppers, and I've got the hottest peppers in the world. I never save seed in that situation because it's very easily that they could have been cross-pollinated, and then I've got this sweet pepper that's now as hot as a Carolina Reaper. So I never save seeds from that. You're welcome to, it's totally fine, but I don't save them. So yeah, always make sure to pay attention to like also growing zones, like when you would put it in the ground. Just read the label just like you do with everything else. You can tell a brand new gardener when I go and look at a brand new vegetable gardener when they get these little starts and they're like, tomato plant, 6 inches, tomato plant. I'm like, oh no, you need like 3 feet for that. You can't put those so close together, you know? So plant spacing is really important. Yeah, so variety. We didn't know when this package was up here that we would end up with thousands and thousands of this brand of seeds, but there's lots of different kinds of seeds you can buy. So yeah, the different kind, that's a hybrid, which is nice. And determinant type. We're going to talk about what determinant means when we get to tomatoes. Disease resistance planting instructions, pay attention to those. And when in doubt, you can always call me. Yeah, so it tells you. Also, the packing year is really important. So the age of your seed matters, okay? Don't let your seeds get hot. Don't let them get wet. There's certain seeds, like a tomato seed can actually last like 40 years if you care for it, right? You keep it dry, you keep it refrigerated. It can last a really, really long time. That comes from Craig LaHoulier, the tomato guy. So peppers are like that. Any in the Solanaceae family is like that. But like a carrot goes down like 50% the next year. Peas, same thing. So if you have older seed, like I never actually throw seed away. If I have a bunch of old seed from 2017, I just sprinkle it all over the place and see what comes up. Throw it in your compost pile, let the birds eat it. You don't have to like throw it away. So that's why it's good to move through your seed pretty quickly, use the stuff up, or like get like containers that are airtight and stick your seeds in the fridge. And they're gonna last a lot longer if you keep them cool. Just make sure that if you take them out to rifle through them, make sure you don't do it if your seeds are cold. Don't take them out of the fridge and walk outside on a humid day, or the cool air is going to condense all that moisture on the outside of the packets of your seeds. So let them come to room temperature, or do that in air conditioning. Word to the wise, learn from our mistakes. Okay, starting vegetables. You'll see this with the seed starters. I don't know, they probably have their own lights now, but it was kind of cool. We had like, when they did you guys did the tomato trials, upstairs we had just like racks and racks of lights and tomatoes growing in the hallway. It was awesome. But you can get grow lights. Yeah, bright window is good, but you're gonna have them stretch because they're always gonna try to, move towards the light. So flip them around. You want them pretty close to the light, so it's kind of nice if you have a light on chains and you can, like especially those metro racks, the racks they use in restaurants and things. If you're curious about what that looks like, I could show you in the other room. It's the restaurant wire racks. If you hang the lights on them, you can crank them up as the plants grow. But you want them to be, and in the case of tomatoes, you actually want like a fan on them. It makes them buff and tough. Like they get because they have to fight against the wind, they actually get a lot stronger. So just a light little, you don't want like a hurricane wind on them, but one of those like little car fans is perfect. But yeah, light is just really important. You don't have to buy necessarily grow lights. You can get cool and warm lights and you get the full spectrum as if they're daylight lamps. So just keep that in mind. Seeding and transplanting. Okay, so I wanted to bring you some celery, but I'll show you that when we go to Briggs. To save space and to see if we have fresh seed or not, I'll take a tray with no holes in it. We'll take holes in it, but not with the little sections like this. And I will just broadcast seed, put a little seed on top, a little soil on top of it, pat it down, and then all of them come up. And then I can just tease them apart and put them individually in cells if I was doing like a plant sale or a container or something. But often to save room in the greenhouse, we'll do this in beds as well. So if I know that I need 200 collard plants, I'll just take an area this big, rough up the soil. This is outdoors in the ground. Lay out some seed, pat it down, water it, and when they all come up in there, they get their true leaves. We'll talk about the difference between codlings and true leaves in a minute. Then I just go over, dig them up, tease them apart, and spread them out all over the garden. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this by saving space. They don't need to be perfectly in 4-inch cots. You can just broadcast them just to see what happens. Yeah, space saver. Yeah, 2 to 3 seeds per pot, then thin out if not using seed bed method. That's another thing you can do if you don't know, if your seed's a little older, but you kept it refrigerated and you're like, let's see what happens. Just seed it thickly and tease it apart. The only thing that doesn't like this are things like melons and squashes. They won't let you do this, they don't like it. But if it's like a celery or a chard or anything like that, they're pretty bulletproof. Especially celery. We tried to kill celery, and I couldn't. We were just shoving them in as fast as we could. I'm like, put 2 or 3 in each one because we're probably going to kill some of them. They were all little. They all survived. They all made it. So we had. If you like celery, please pick some up today. Okay. So we're going to get ready to go outside. We need to harden them off. You can't just take the plants from the inside, especially in the case of summer plants. If they've been in a protected area and you put them out in the blazing sun without kind of moving them out there, you'll scorch them. So a lot of times they will recover, but you don't want to stress plants unnecessarily. They're going to have to deal with a lot as it is when they're babies. So try to strengthen a little bit before you put them out there. So you can put them often what we'll do is put them under a table so they just get the first couple of hours of sunlight for a couple days, and then we move them to the top of the table against where it's shade in the afternoon so they get 4 or 5 hours, and then we just push them out into the main area, and then they get like 6, 7 hours of sunlight, and then they're ready to sell or put out in the garden. Row covers are also really helpful too for diffused light. If you don't have that, you can like put them on the top of the table, cover them with one of those like gossamer covers, the row covers. You can get them over here at Stone Brothers. I can show you what they look like, just remind me at Briggs. Those are good to have if you're in a vegetable garden anyway, because that's how you overwinter things. So it's just a handy thing to have around the garden. And if they're looking rough, see that looks like it got a little scorchy there, move it back, it's fine, it'll probably recover. Seed storage, we talked about this. Things drop off exponentially if you don't take care of them, and then there's certain kinds of crops that just, you need to, like if you caught peas or beans, plant them all next year. Or freeze them if you're gonna try to make them last 2 years, put them in the freezer, that's really the best. Yeah, crisper drawer is a great place to put them. Just be careful because that is the lowest spot in your refrigerator, and you get like condensation or somebody might spill something, and so just make sure they're in an airtight container. That way if they get wet, you can just wipe it off. Another thing, a germination test. If you take a paper towel, wet it, and put 10 seeds. I like to do it in a row because that way if I want to use them, if they germinate, I can actually use them. You can pick them up with a little knife or something. The reason you do 10 seeds is if only 3 of them sprout, you know you have a 30% germination rate. Yeah, so here's the thing. A lot of times people think that you put seeds in the ground, things are just going to sprout automatically. No, the soil temperature really does matter. So if you put a bunch of pepper seeds down, especially hot peppers, and it isn't warm, they won't sprout for months. So if you put pepper seeds down, that's why, like, to self-seed things in my garden, when I first started, I used to have everything in perfect little rows with perfect little labels. Now, I have stuff that just comes up every year. For instance, basil. I grow 4 or 5 different kinds of basil in my garden. At the end of the season, when I'm sick of it, I let it go to seed, and I strip the seeds off, and I just throw them down the garden bed. And then they won't come up again until next year. So that's everything to do with day length and soil temperature. They won't just sprout randomly, like if it's not warm enough. So that's a trick that you can do. You sometimes, especially when you're new, you won't notice if a little seedling. I can tell just when a seed, even when it just has its cotyledons often, what family it's in because I'm so used to looking at them. But when you're started, sometimes like you'll be growing something and then you'll look down and there's a little like tuft of these leaves. And people are like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's a tomato. So you can tell it's getting warm enough, and a tomato had dropped off in their bed, died, and then the seeds just hung out there for a year and then came up when it was warm again. So if you wanted to, you could tease those apart and you have your tomatoes, but you don't really know what they are. So yeah, make sure planting depth is also really important. Generally speaking, the larger the seed, the deeper it goes. So like a bean is you'd bury it down to your first knuckle, like an inch. And if it's like a mustard seed, which is considerably smaller, or like a beet would be 3/4 of the way down because it's like a little cluster. It's like the size of a grape nut, basically. If I'm dating myself, that's like a 90s or 80s, bark, colon blow cereal. Anyway, it's that, and then there's like mustard seeds, the brassicas that are a little smaller. You're just going to do like barely here, and then things like lettuces that are like dust, practically. They're very small. You basically just put them on the surface of the soil and press them down and wet them. If you have a lot of birds, you cover it with just a little bit of soil so they don't come and eat all your seeds. And that's it. So seed depth is really important. If you bury the heck out of lettuce seeds, they might sprout, but they'll never make it out of the ground. So if you have tall, leggy seedlings, it means they're not getting enough light, and you really don't want them leggy, because then when you put them in the ground and they start to grow, sometimes they'll grow along the ground and then come up. It's much better if they're like little champion babies, especially in the case of summer crops. You can fudge it a little bit more with the fall and spring crops, but the summer crops, because they're so disease prone, you need them to be champions before they go in the ground. So don't ever buy a sickly looking plant. Don't ever buy a leggy looking plant, because the chances of it being able to recover and fight against all the things that are going to attack it during its life cycle is considerably reduced. Do you have a question?
Adventitious roots for tomatoes, though, so you can bury part of the stem.
You can, absolutely, but still, like the adventitious roots he's talking about, we'll have that on the slide. That's where you bury the stem so that it puts off all of these extra roots, which is great, but still, if it's like super leggy and kind of weak looking, it's like, you know, you're rolling the dice a little bit more, definitely, yeah. Yeah, you sure not to start them too early. Like, you don't want big, buff, 2 feet tall tomato plants in the middle of February or March because you won't have anywhere to put them. And if they're yellow discolored leaves, just hit them with some fish emulsion. You'll probably be good. It's probably a nitrogen deficiency. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm going downward. What am I doing? Okay, warm season vegetables. Okay, so this is kind of fun. I love that you put this in here, so cute. Transplant and seed. So at the top of all of the families, you'll be able to see whether you would start it from transplant or seed. It also tells you on this this calendar. So if I look and I'm like, oh, it's September 1st, so I can do the seeds of arugula right now. I can do the seeds of beans, and I can do transplants of broccoli. So that's how you read that. And it'll tell you, from a transplant or a seed, this is how long it's going to take for you to be able to get food off of it. Okay? Your harvest. This is a really great resource to look at for vegetable gardening, and it's go in CSU EDU, and this is from University of Georgia, seed starting. Cornell also has like excellent vegetable gardening resources, like just pages on each vegetable, which I love. Too bad I found it, like that particular resource yesterday, because I'm gonna spend hours reading it. Because you can never learn enough. Like, I've been teaching vegetable gardening, every time I teach a class, I study again, because there's always new stuff that comes up, stuff maybe that you didn't see, or research that's happened since you taught the last time, and yeah, it's forever fascinating. Sweet corn. So I love sweet corn. I don't usually grow it, unless I'm doing it ornamentally, to like create a shade or like a fence or something like that. Just because it takes up a lot of room, it's a really heavy feeder, and the same pests that attack tomatoes attack the ear of corn. So that's a tomato fruit worm and a corn earworm are the same pest for this. So you need to grow corn in a block because it's wind pollinated. Bees don't really have anything to do with it. So if you put it in a row, the only way to pollinate it is to grab the tassel and shake it onto the silks of the corn. The silks are each silk links to one kernel. And if it doesn't get the pollen all over the silks, it won't pollinate and create a kernel. So if you open up your corn and there's like chunks missing out of it, that just means that no pollen landed on that particular silk. So you can hand pollinate your corn, or you can just go out there and shake it, the wind blows, but that's why you plant it in a block or a field. But sweet corn is like so cheap when it's in season. I just go to the farmer's market and get it, and then like grow more tomatoes. But that's me. It's really what works for you. Lots of nitrogen because it is one of the world's largest grasses. So it's definitely the largest one we eat off of. This is a grain. It is not a vegetable. So, and I talk about this a lot when I teach nutrition classes, that if you're eating like steak, a potato, and a grain, and corn, you have no vegetables on your plate. You do with the potato, but it's a starch more than like a green vegetable. So anyway, but yeah, that's a grain, not a vegetable. You can stagger planting every 2 weeks, so you have a harvest every 2 weeks. Very heavy feeder. If you want to get the most out of your corn, sweet corn is beautiful, but as soon as you pick it, the very simple sugars start to rack up and create starches. So when you're ready to pick your corn, you go start your salted water boiling first, then you go out and pick your corn, peel it, and drop it right in the water, or throw it right on the grill. The quicker you start to cook it, you stop that enzymatic reaction, and you get to enjoy the most sugar in the corn. So that's why you want to get corn that was like picked that day at the farmer's market. And you don't want to let it sit in your refrigerator for 2 weeks before you cook it. Yeah, it'll still be corn, but it won't be as sweet as the day that it was picked. Legumes. So these are those wonderful nitrogen-fixing family of plants. Fabaceae. I love all different kinds of beans. My favorite to grow are fava beans because they don't take up too much room and they're gloriously beautiful. They're really gorgeous. It's one of like the oldest beans on earth. Southern peas, you really need warm soils, and you kind of need a lot of room because this is like a shelling pea. Your crabber peas, your black-eyed peas, you kind of need room for this. If you grow 2 or 3 of these, you're not going to have enough to really make like a pound or 2 of beans that you can serve people, and they do take up a lot of room. So this is something that you would plan to have a lot more room. The bush and pole varieties of butter beans and green beans, this is mostly what people grow as green beans. Pay attention on your package to see whether or not you would need a trellis or you would just grow them in a little bush. So the bush beans are super easy because you don't need to think about it, and you can plug them into little areas where there's sun, but you have kind of like a lower growing area. You can have like the tomatoes and peppers and then a bunch of beans at the bottom of them. If you are going to grow corn, you can do Three Sisters. I don't know if you've heard of this, where you grow corn, beans, and squash all together. That's where you grow pole beans that go up the corn. So that's kind of nice because they all feed each other and take care of each other, which is nice. Peanuts are super interesting. I used to grow these at elementary schools until they all became peanut-free environments. But if you, say, are going on vacation for the summer and you do not want to deal with weeds and whatnot, the two best crops are sweet potatoes and peanuts. It's great because these are nitrogen fixers, and they grow real thickly and they choke out weeds. They're wonderful. And then you can come back and harvest them, and you've got all these beautiful, delicious peanuts. So this plant will put off a little flower, a little beautiful yellow flower. It'll get pollinated, and then basically the flower part drops off and a peg grows out and goes under the ground, and then a nut forms. So when you look at these, it's beautiful foliage, but you can't see the peanuts at all until you pull up the whole plant, and they're kind of dangling from the bottom. So very fun. We actually have a peanut lab here in North Carolina at North Carolina State University, and they breed them for mainly cocktail peanuts. I found out the hard way because I went down there and said, oh, I really want to grow these out and show kids how to make peanut butter. It's going to be great fun. And the guy said, these aren't for peanut butter. And I was like, you can't make peanut butter out of these? He's like, no. If you want those, you go down to Georgia and get some of those gnarly looking peanuts. These are beautiful and they're perfect and they're for cocktail peanuts. I was like, excuse me, sir. I will be teaching them how to roast peanuts and put flavorings on them. So, and they're like these big, bodacious, juicy cocktail peanuts. I still made peanut butter out of some of them though, so. It isn't just artists that are sensitive about their stuff. Scientists are as well. Cucurbitaceae, one of my favorite words, cucurbits. The cucurbit family is everything pretty much that grows on a vine, and you like a cucumber, gourds, a bitter melon, squashes, whether they're winter squashes or summer squashes. You'll hear this as a master gardener. People will like come to you and say, in September, October, and say, I want to grow winter squash. You're like, great, come see me in June next year, because they don't realize that just because it's winter squash, they call it winter squash because you're able to keep it over the winter, but you don't grow it in the winter. So
we're smarter than that.
Yes, well, people don't know. They think that if it's called winter squash, then they're growing it then, like summer spinach, but it's not true. They're very easy to grow, very easy, very productive here. The varieties are really important though, because there are a lot of pests, things like pickle worms, squash bugs, especially things like squash vine borers. That's another thing you have to watch out for, and there are different ways that you can mitigate those pests. Like in the case of squash bugs, you're going to be picking them off. That's why I don't encourage people at the community garden have a ton of squash in their bed, because it takes up a whole lot of room, and if I diligently pick off every squash bug and remove all of their eggs from the bottom of all the leaves, and I don't have any on mine, somebody next door who has some, they're like, oh great, no competitors, and they come over, and so it's one of those things where you kind of have to stay on top of them so that you don't have not only problems this year, but that they kind of infest your landscape and you have problems year after year. So, plants up to the cotyledons were so direct. So I'll show you cotyledons in just a second. Cucumbers can become too bitter when it becomes too hot. There are varieties that you can grow, some Japanese varieties that don't really get bitter, like a Suyo Long. There's also an Armenian cucumber that can grow in 130-degree temperatures and not go bitter, but it's really truly a gourd. If you pick it small, it's like a cucumber, and it can get, this big and still be edible, and it never gets bitter. Yes?
I have a neighbor that was growing a number of cucumbers, and he had some new variety, and I never saw what it was, and it was flowering beautifully. The bees were real busy, but he wasn't getting any fruit. And I was looking at it, and I said, well, I don't see any female flowers on this. It was all male flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So the question, I guess, is, at some point that plant will produce the female flowers? Well, he was impatient and he just said it's not working, and he pulled them. You know, he pulled them out of the ground, and it was during a hot part of the summer as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the issue was.
If he would have waited, it would have been a little bit better once it cooled down a few degrees. So there's some flowers that are perfect, they have male and female parts, and there's others that are imperfect, and they grow two types. Either they'll grow like, some plants have like all male flowers and some have all female flowers and they have to be next to each other, or some just have, like in the case of cucurbits, have male and female flowers and they have to be pollinated. The way that you can tell, this is another time I wish I had a board to draw on, is that like squash flowers like these, I'll show you. So this is a female flower and you can tell because now it's been pollinated, but this, how it has a squash on the end of it, and then the flower opens, before it gets pollinated, it's a little tiny squash. And and you can also tell from the parts inside too. But this is obviously a female flower. This is a male flower. You see how the stem just goes up and then there's the blossom? So that's the male flower and that has the pollen in it. So you just grab one of these, grab the pollen out of it, wipe it on the inside of that one. And if you do that every day, every single female flower will be pollinated. Fortunately, where we are, we have a bajillion bees, so they get pollinated all the time. You'll have 4 or 5 bees sometimes hanging out in here, you know, in here and in here. This is also a glorious summer vegetable. It's called Flor de Calabaza, which is basically squash blossom. And so what I do is I go around and I pick all these. You leave these so you can have the fruit, but you pick all these and you take some of the pollen and then pollinate every single female flower. But you pick these and like you can stuff them with cheese and fry them, or you can just like put them to finish a soup, or you can just eat them in a salad. They're really beautiful and they're fleeting. You don't have them forever. But the same thing with, you don't really do that. It's like a miniature flower of this for a cucumber. It's very leafy, but on the back of it you can see the tiny cucumber. So yeah, and sometimes it's temperature dependent. When it's super, super hot, sometimes it'll just produce all male flowers. Sometimes it just does that for a few days and then it produces some female ones. They're putting them off every day. They only stay open a day. So, patience. All right. Okay, so cotyledons. So this is basically 2 sides of a seed. And you'll see this when you germinate something, especially a bean. A bean is a really good example of it. A bean will soak, and then there's like a, you know, if this is half of the bean, in between there's the germ, this little like chunk of stuff that basically has this vitamin E oil in it to protect the genetics of the plant. And then the 2 sides of the bean are the potential cotyledons, and all that is starch, so that when the temperature is right and the moisture is right and everything's right, the plant will sort of wake up, it'll come out of dormancy. The genetics will start creating proteins, and in order to do that, it uses up the starch that's in those sides of the bean. And then it splits and it opens up. So that's a cotyledon. It's photosynthesizes. That starch that's in the bean or any seed is just enough for it to get its first leaves out. They're not true leaves, they're cotyledons. And then it starts to create its own starch. So it starts to photosynthesize. But that bit of sugar that's in all those seeds you've ever had, ever planted or ever eaten for that matter, those 2 open up it's just enough fuel to get the cotyledons out. Then it starts photosynthesizing, it's cranking, it's making proteins and whatnot, and then it can start to make true leaves. So when something makes a set of true leaves, that's usually when you can start thinking about transplanting it. Some plants I like to be a little bit bigger and more buff than that, but that's the difference between the 2. So if you just have these guys with a little cotyledon, leave him alone. Let him do his thing. And you'll even notice this, like there's certain plant, like if a seed is long and thin, often its cotyledons will be long and thin. And if they're like little short stout ones, sometimes it puts off little short stout cotyledons. So that's not true for everything, but you'll start to notice these things as you plant. But those are its true leaves. So let's see. Oh, and when we were talking about, like, often when you grow the cucurbits, sometimes they'll get a little bit leggy with their cotyledons, like before they'll go shh, and the cotyledons will be kind of far out. You can bury them up to here. Don't assume you can do that with every plant, but you can do that with things like tomatoes. Tomatoes are a little different. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but definitely squashes. These are some of the pests. Downy mildew. You're gonna deal with it sometimes. It's a fungus. You can leave it alone. A lot of times stuff will, you don't usually get this until it's rained and it's much later in the season. Sometimes it'll happen. You can still pick the fruit off of it, it's not too bad. Make sure that you grow something up on a trellis and you allow it to dry out. You don't want to grow a bunch of them right next to each other so they're all covering each other up. If it can dry out, this is a lot less. Like if you pick these off, these diseased leaves, you saw just a few of them, and you want to pick them off, don't go touching a bunch of other stuff because you're just going to infect it. Pick these off, throw them in a garbage can, get them off the landscape. Don't put them in your compost pile, okay? All right, squash vine borers. These are evil. I hate them. Basically, there's a few things you can do to combat these. Often people will wrap the stem of their little guys that are going in the ground so that if this guy comes out of the ground and tries to get into the stem, it hits aluminum. So that often works. We did have a little bit of success injecting the stems with BT one year. That's Bacillus thuringiensis. It's this bacteria that is harmless to humans, but for chewing pests, it interrupts their digestion and they die. So we went around with this liquid BT and injected it in all the stems, and we had pretty good success with that. But it's just a matter of, sometimes you can see where they've gone in and you can cut a slit and dig them out. You can do that too. So it just means keeping your eyes on them. So when the adults are active, if you cover things with row cover, you can prevent them from laying eggs and them getting up in there. But you know, it's also a matter of rotating things. See, I never have these. I don't grow squash every year in my own garden. I've only grown it like every other year, so I've only grown it like 3 years. I've never had a squash bug, and I've never had one of these either. So because I don't grow it every year and it's so infrequent and I don't have that many plants, but it breaks, you better believe, every year we have one or both of those that we have to deal with. So winter squash, you're going to grow them the same. They do vine a lot more than the summer squashes do. They're super fun. Gourds, ornamental gourds are the easiest because they're not as tasty. So like animals don't really want to go for them and eat them as much as they do a pumpkin. Make sure that they have room to spread out and they aren't growing in tall grasses, especially if you give them some mulch to grow on. You're not going to have as much problem with foliar diseases and needing fungicides and things like that. It's all about space and air. And remember, anything that creates a fruit is a heavy feeder, pretty much. You're going to need to fertilize them. Melons, cucurbitaceae. You could do seed or starts on this. The smaller melons, you can actually grow them on a trellis and hammock them with like pantyhose or a net bag that you had potatoes in or something. That's really fun. If you need to harvest your watermelon, this is something that our plot owners sometimes call me about, is like, when is this thing ripe? Because cantaloupe and muskmelon, you know when it's ripe because it starts to smell. And also, if you pick it a little early, it'll continue to ripen once you pick it. That's called climacteric. Plantis climacteric, a fruit is when it ripens after you pick it. Like an avocado, you buy it hard and it gets soft. You know, you buy a banana green and it turns black eventually, that's a climacteric fruit. Cantaloupes and all other muskmelons like honeydew and gallias and all those will ripen after you pick them. Watermelons don't. If you don't pick them ripe, too bad. So anyway, they all need consistent moisture. They're all very heavy feeders, and you don't want to let them dry out and then get super wet or they can crack. So also, I like to put them on like a little bed of mulch, just so I don't get too many invasions from bugs. But they're super fun to grow, and if you don't want to work too hard on them, you know, as my busy gardener in the summer thing, I grow melons all the time and just let them just go crazy. And then you go out and you're like, oh wow, I got another melon. It's completely random. I love it. Okay, so talk about tomatoes. So this is the one you're going to get the calls the most about. This is America's favorite garden vegetable because it creates a fruit. It's so much more important than a leaf crop. Anything that creates a fruit is going to cause more agita with the people that you're serving because the stakes are higher. You watch it develop. You can't wait to slice into it and have it on a BLT or just a tomato sandwich. But I didn't have a tomato sandwich until I came to the South, and I love them. So, and everybody wants to do just this. They want to just grow tomatoes and nothing else. And so often, like I've had people cry over their tomatoes, bless their hearts. Like, I'm a terrible gardener. It's like, no, you're awesome. started with the very hardest thing, your very first time out the gate. So you got to give yourself a little break. You know, they are difficult, but they are beautiful and wonderful and amazing. You know, that song, there's only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes. If you haven't heard that song, look it up. It's the cutest. Oh, I love it so much. Anyway, this is like a homegrown tomato. There's nothing more local than your backyard, and I'm telling you, it's a beautiful, wonderful experience to have these. There's lots of, we're going to talk about them. The large fruited ones are called slicers. That's where it's like, as you know, the one slice that you get like for a sandwich or a burger or something. It's like a big slicer. It's got a lot of juice and seeds on the inside. Ox hearts are beautiful. There's like a corps de boeuf, which means like a bull's heart. There's a lot of them that are beautiful. I think, is it Juan Flam, or there's another one that's like heart-shaped. It looks like an animal heart. It's beautiful. Those ones can either be really juicy, or they can also be really rich with like tissues, kind of like a paste or aroma. So if you hear like aroma tomato is a paste tomato, or aroma type tomato is sort of like that Supremo Roma that we were looking at previously on there. What that is it's meant to be made into sauce. You can make sauce out of any tomatoes, but these are a lot less trouble because there's very few seeds, and they're much more like full of like tissue. They're pithier, they're less juicy. So you don't have to squeeze out so many seeds and cook off as much water to get a really rich sauce out of them. So that's why they're called. But you can eat these in salads and everything. You can eat them. And then there's grape tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. Grape ones just look like grapes, and cherries look like cherries. If you have a little bit less sunlight, the smaller tomatoes are easier to grow because you're only creating a tinier fruit. They're easier, but you have to go out and harvest them every couple of days. So if you're hot like me and you don't want to be out there all the time, I grow slicers because then I can just go out once a week and harvest. If you do a grape or cherry, you have to go out every couple of days. In fact, in the garden, I discourage people from growing these because if they go on vacation, stuff just drops on the ground and it makes people crazy. Other people crazy because they're like, they're wasting tomatoes. So they don't care if they're wasting lettuce, but you waste a tomato? No ma'am. Okay, then determinate versus indeterminate versus dwarf. We're going to talk about that. Heirloom versus hybrid. We have already spoken a little bit about that. And tomatoes are, generally speaking, self-fruitful. But you can cross-pollinate them and create other types. That's what tomato breeders do. Okay, determinate. Easy way to remember this. You can determine how big the tomato is going to get. So those little cages, those cute little cages, those are perfect for determinate tomatoes. Not every, but the majority of tomatoes that you can get year-round, well, all the tomatoes you can get year-round in the grocery store, your generic Roma, your generic cherry, your generic, slicer tomato, beefsteaks or whatever, those are all determinate. And the reason being is that they put off all the flowers at the same time and most of the fruit all at the same time. And they can't be harvested with machines. So you send a crew out into a field, they harvest everything at the same time and pack it up and ship it around the world. So they grow, you can hold them up with one stake, or you can get those little cones, stick them in the ground, they do just fine. If you're a canner, these are great. If you've got a big family, these are fine. If you're 1 or 2 people in a household, you don't necessarily need 25 pounds of tomatoes all at the same time. So just keep in mind, if you love your neighbors and you like to share, this is a great plant to have. Then there's indeterminate. You cannot determine how big it's going to get. It has a vining habit. This is a bush habit. This is a vining habit. This can grow 12, 15 feet tall if it's healthy.
Wow.
Yeah, they get massive. And, I said the other day to one of our gardeners, it's taller than me. They're like, yeah, that's not really saying much. I'm like, but it's really tall though. So it can grow very, very, very tall, like big, gigantic bushes. And so at Briggs, we use these big, like round tunnels. You can do something called a Florida weave, where you do like stake, stake, stake every couple of feet, and you weave cord around, and then you keep weaving it as the plant grows, and you weave it in between those weaves. It's a real cheap way to do it, and you can grow like a wall of tomatoes that way. So indeterminate means you can't determine how big it's going to be. And this is great for if you have a small family, or even if you have a large family, but you just eat them fresh, because it puts off a few flowers and a few fruit, and then later on it puts on some more flowers and some more fruit. It fruits and flowers throughout the season, all season long. So this is useful to have if you're not going to can a bunch of stuff. And then there are dwarfs, which are relatively new. I'm sure they've been around for a long time, but where you can actually get them on the market. They have a determinate bush growth habit, but an indeterminate fruiting and flowering habit. So you've got this wee plant. They often are much smaller even than some of the, you can even get like a tiny Tim only gets like, they're great for kids. They get like 18 inches tall. They're so cute. And they put off these wee little tomatoes. They're so awesome. But there's a lot of different dwarfs that you can get. You get. Some of them make slicers, some of them make tiny tomatoes. There's a lot of different kinds out there. So dwarf is determinate growth habit like a bush, but indeterminate fruit and flower habit. So it flowers and fruits through the season. Tomato planting tips, adventitious roots. So if you get this tomato and it's real long and tall, even if it has leaves all along it, you can bury it deeply, but what I like to do is break off all the leaves except for the top ones, and you can bury it in a little trench. You just dig a trench, bury it, and stick its little head out the top. I mix in a little bit of compost and fertilizer in with it, pat it down, and it makes it, it's really nice because all along this stem, you're going to get adventitious roots. You're going to get little roots growing off into the soil. It increases its heat tolerance and drought tolerance. So it's a great way to plant tomatoes. Doing good, everybody? Any questions? Okay. All right. Okay. Peppers. This is my favorite summer vegetable, are peppers. I can't even eat stuff that, yes?
Sorry, could you just go back to the other one? Was it trimming off the little
Yep, so you don't bury the leaves, trim them off.
Okay.
And then bury it like to there. Yes?
What is summering? Pick the summers off.
Oh, great question. I think, I'll be right back, I'm gonna look at one of those things. I gotta be able to write.
There it is.
Oh, we can see better than one, because I won't need an extra one. I have to be able to write things. I'm a visual learner, y'all. Did I come over here? Just for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I've got my tomato plant. I buried it. I'm not an artist, but you know. Okay, so I've got leaves growing, my stems. It's mainly at the nodes, so where kind of get branches off, okay? What you'll get a lot of times, this will come off, you've got flowers and some fruit hanging off of it, and then all of a sudden, boop, there's a little tomato that's like a secondary branch that comes off of there, okay? So this is called a sucker, and there are definitely two ways of thought about this. Some of them people are like, leave them, I don't care. And other people are like, no, take them off because, you know, they're causing problems. If I live in the western states, I left them on because I need as much foliage to cover up the tomatoes so they don't scorch and die. Even though it's more expensive for me water-wise because I have to water it more, it traps the moisture around the plant. So it's like a kind of a two-edged sword there. A double-edged sword, but I had really good irrigation, so I was like, oh no, that's staying on there. I'm gonna let it grow into a tight little bush to protect the fruit. North Carolina, take them off. I take them off because I need as much air moving through that plant as possible. I don't need as much shade for the fruit, so I remove them. Also, people are real attached to tomatoes. These senesce, they die. They come to a certain age and they crash and burn. That's just gonna happen, even if you had the perfect situation, but you'll get people calling you with their hearts broken. What happened to my tomato plant? It's 3 months old and it's 100 degrees outside. That's what happened to your tomato plant. It just happens, you know that. But you can break these off and stick them in water. They'll root. You got another tomato plant. So you can actually extend your harvest if you pick these off and root them. So anyway, suckers. Thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. Moving on.
Wait, sorry, is that like a natural thing that plants do, or is it like some plants do that?
No, it's tomatoes do it.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, some places, you know, there's usually in that little node there, sometimes plants will make flowers, sometimes they'll make fruit. It just depends. But for tomatoes, it makes more tomato plant. Peppers. Okay. We got spicy, we got sweet. I really want to show you the row over at the Briggs Garden because there's the common ancestor of all chilies. We grow that one every year. We also grow the hottest pepper in the world. And then all the rest of them are all different every year. It's very fun. If you're curious and you love peppers, your resident pepper nerd is Lolatree. She grows our rare ones every year. I give her carte blanche to give you whatever, and we end up with really cool stuff. So these like it really warm. I even put them in after tomatoes. There's no reason to rush these because if the soil temperature is not warm, you can't even sprout them in a greenhouse without putting them on a heating pad if you want them to come up within 2 weeks. You put them on a heating pad and they're happy, they'll come up, they do well. But if it's even a few degrees below, whatever, 70 degrees, you can forget about it. So I like to do starts because this creates a fruit, so it needs a really long growth time. And I would rather keep them warm in a greenhouse, create these strong little champions, and then when the soil is warm outside, I've got this buff little soldier to stick out there and fight the good fight against all the bugs that are gonna attack it. Although hot peppers, fungus will attack them, bugs don't really touch them. I don't know, they just don't. So heat mat, you can start them in the water. They're very productive when fertilized. Remember, this is a fruit, so it requires a lot of, especially phosphorus and potassium, but nitrogen to create the leaves so that, remember, all the leaves are solar panels that are creating starch. That is a lot of starch. So much more so than like a lettuce or something like that. That's why these are so expensive, is because they're creating this big ball of starch. So yes, you definitely need to fertilize them. Spicy and sweet can cross-pollinate. We talked about this briefly earlier, that you don't want, even though they're self-fruitful, like maybe if I had my Carolina Reapers on one side of my property and my sweet pepper on my other side of the property, I might save seeds. But at Briggs, you'll see they're all really close together. There's 26 varieties in this shoehorn kind of, these 2 rows. And I wouldn't risk saving a sweet pepper seed and then giving it to a family and they plant it and their child picks it and eats like half a Reaper, you know. So just be mindful of that, yes?
Do you know why spicy peppers or like the super hots prefer to be overwintered versus the sweet ones?
You know, I don't really know because it really depends on, most sweet peppers are capsicum annum, and they don't do well when you try to grow them the second year, whereas the super hots are capsicum chinense. So I don't know if it's because it's its particular species. I don't know if you've heard of bonsai. This is, Lolatree is doing this as well. It is where you bonsai a chili plant, and the hot peppers seem to do really well. They love it when you bonsai them, but we'll talk about the different species. I have, I think, almost all of at least one of each type of species out there. And it has this like really beautiful, almost like umbrella growth habit. It looks different than the rest of the peppers. We also have capsicum pubescens, the ones that are like good to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll show you all those when we get there. But yeah, I don't really know. But you're right, the super hots, the spicies, the chinense, they tend to do better when you manipulate them and shove them into different places and put them in pots, and they're just hardier. They're also more disease resistant too. So let's see. These are our super spicy. The Carolina Reaper was developed by Ed Curry. I don't know if you've seen The Champions. If you've seen that, some people watch that Netflix. It's great dinner watching. Turn that thing on if you need a laugh. Because I think it's like 4 different competitions around the world, but one of them goes on in America. And Ed Curry, who I'm trying so hard, Ashley, you're gonna have to help me stalk him. I've tried so hard to get a hold of this man because he is a weirdo and he's a plant guy and his farm is 3 hours from here. And I was like, if I can get a hold of him, I will like give him all the presents and I'm gonna take Master Gardeners with me and we're gonna go to his farm. But now he's world famous because he's grown the Reaper. He is on that We Are the Champions show. There's like 4, and then one of them is like eating hot chilies. Now he has the the Carolina Reaper, which is the current hottest pepper in the world, but it's an arms race, people. People are constantly trying to make hotter and hotter peppers, and here's what he's already done, and I know he's already done, because I watch his stuff, and he's friends with Sean Evans of Hot Ones. If you haven't seen Hot Ones, it's another great show. It's an online show where people eat progressively hotter chicken wings while they get interviewed. It's awesome. Anyway, people like hallucinate and start losing their minds. It's fantastic. I mean, I'm talking like musicians and politicians and movie stars and stuff are all on there, and it's a great show. Anyway, he has already developed the hottest pepper, and he's actually developed much hotter peppers, and he's just keeping them in the vault so that when somebody else comes out with another one, he just like, and raise you a tomato. So, and you'll see that actually in that show because people are eating reapers. And then finally they've gotten to the limit of reapers and they're like, okay, open up the vault. And they bring out all these other peppers. It's crazy. I love it. I can't eat stuff that hot, but I'm fascinated to grow them. I think the story of individual foods fascinates me. And so that's why Lala Tree can have whatever she wants. It's like, just keep them coming. Because and also people are fascinated with them as well, and some people can really, they come in every year, they're like, you got some of those reapers? I'm like, you can have as many as you want, you cannot eat any of them here, but you can take them out of here, and you're good to go. So, okay, moving on to Solanaceae. These are great to grow here. The only pest they really have is a flea beetle, which makes the leaves look like a gunshot pattern, and it doesn't affect the fruit. So if you like eggplants, which I love growing weird stuff. So I grow weird eggplants. I don't eat that many eggplants. I'll eat a few per season. There's never a time where I'm like, if I could just have an eggplant. It's not my favorite thing. I'll eat it because I grow it. But I love growing like all the colors at Briggs. They have like tiny yellow Turkish ones, and they have like red eggplants, and we have a green eggplant out there that actually turns red. And it's real bitter then, but it looks really visually beautiful. But yeah, I love growing like the different varieties of eggplants. Same family, Solanaceae, and they really do best when they really do best when they're in starts. The flowers are purple and beautiful. They are self-fruitful, but they can cross if bees are around them. But yeah, there's Indian eggplants, Asian eggplants of all kinds, Japanese eggplants, American eggplants, Italian, especially the Italians, man, they have figured out a lot about the eggplant game for sure. They have any of the ones that are like striped in purple and pink are usually Italian. They're glorious. I don't see any representations here, but we always grow a bunch of them at Briggs. Potatoes. So this one I added in. That's one of my favorite food photos of all time, this potato picture. Potatoes are a super diverse group and crop. You can grow all different kinds. They're very easy to grow. You can save them for the following year by just keeping them in a cool, dark place, and they get the little eyes on them, and you can grow them. There's actually determinate and indeterminate ones. I found that out. So I know, I was like, I need to research this because, some apparently have a bush habit, and some of them you're supposed to bury them, and as they grow, you keep burying them and burying them and burying them. And just like the adventitious roots that get formed in tomatoes, its cousin, with these guys, they put off roots, but they put off tubers under there if you continue to bury them and bury them. So, and I was just super surprised that there were seeds, so I'm going to give that a whirl next year and give it a try. These are great to grow in containers, too. It's very easy to grow them in containers, especially if they're determinate varieties. We only have 30 more minutes, so I'm going to cruise through this. Okay, so okra is in the hibiscus family, Mildew. What's great is we also have a drinkable Jamaica hibiscus out at Briggs, which I'll show you, and the flower looks exactly the same as this red okra. You really want to plant it when it's warm. I do like doing starts, but you can also direct seed them early in the season. They take forever to come up, but they come up just at the right time. And I love the ones that get, as tall as like Christmas trees. So just beware wherever you put them. You don't want to shade the rest of your bed when you grow stuff. You need to harvest it every day or two. Otherwise, something goes from this big to this big like overnight. And if you aren't going to be on top of it all the time, grow a Clemson spineless because they can get big and you can still eat them. The spines in them, it's sort of like they're like these cellulose fibers that are just, it's like chewing on raw twine if you pick them when they're too big. And the goal of the plant is to make genetics for the next season. So if you let that seed pod get like that and dry, it's not going to put off any more fruit. So it'll stop flowering and stop fruiting. So you got to go out and harvest it every couple of days. So, and you need more than one because you only get 1 or 2 okra a day. So you really need 4 or 5 plants to get a good harvest of okra frequently. But kind of put it on the back 40 a little bit or the back 20 so that you don't shade other things. And you can just walk out there and harvest, but it isn't right on top of, where you can shade things that need more light. Rotate your crops just like regular, and it grows tall like a tree. These are great. Sweet potatoes, we're the #1 exporter of sweet potatoes in the United States. Usually Covington is our main one here, but we actually have a sweet potato lab as well. I found that out, and they usually donate slips to us every year. It is very easy to make slips off of sweet potatoes. You can actually just let them sit around on a sunny window and they'll create slips. Or you can put them in, like, the easiest way to do it is to get one of those like dish tubs for 99 cents at the store. Put a little sand in there, put your potatoes and a little bit of water. Let them sit in a sunny area and they'll shoot off a bunch of starts, of slips, they call them. Break off the slips, stick them in water, and they'll put off a ton. And leave those potatoes in the sandy water, and they will actually continue to make more slips. So you can get a lot off of them. The greens are edible. So people don't know that actually in Africa, most of the food that people get off of yam or sweet potatoes is actually the greens. So you can go into different international grocery stores and just buy the greens as a green vegetable. There aren't that many summer greens, especially ones that don't create a ton of oxalic acid. Like oxalic acid is when you saute spinach real lightly and just eat a big bunch of it by itself. You get that like, there's like a coating almost. Those are oxalates. And you can get rid of that by blanching things. But in the summer, like Malabar spinach, it's a beautiful vining spinach. It's not a true spinach, it's a totally different tropical plant. But anything in that family that gets hot outside creates a lot more of that oxalic acid. This is a green that you can grow that doesn't have that. So it's really lovely, it's really like soft. You can eat it in salads. I like to saute it, the stems are also really good. Deer also love them though. That's the only time deer has ever come into my yard is when we grew this perennial, but we just grew it just so I didn't have to weed it. And all of them were shaved off. I'm like, what is happening? It's like, oh, the deer are coming into our yard. That's what's happening. So it chokes out the weeds. If you have like a school garden and they're gone for the summer, this is the perfect crop. Plant these as soon as the kids leave for school. They grow over, they choke out all the weeds, and then when they come back from holiday or from vacation, you pull these all up and you have a big party. I would grow, they got a lot of weird kinds that are purple on the inside, purple on the outside. Some are just purple on the outside, white on the inside, red, yellow. There's all different kinds. I think they grow like 30 varieties at our sweet potato lab. And there's some that the foliage is so gloriously beautiful, they just grow for the foliage. So you can eat those too. Oh, and it's related to morning glories. Convolvulaceae. Okay, herbs. There's more herbs kind of at the end of this, but I didn't really get too much into perennial herbs. For annuals, you've got like basil, parsley, dill, and cilantro. Technically, a couple of these are biennials, but we grow them like annuals. Biennials are where you grow something over winter. Sometimes it has leaves, sometimes it comes down into its root, and then it comes back up the second year and gives you seeds. We're usually not always growing for seeds unless you want to grow your own coriander or something. Like cilantro, when you grow it, the second year will make coriander. Coriander are the seeds to cilantro. So that's a nice little, yeah, it's a good trivia question for people. But yeah, I mean, dill seed, fennel seed, all of those spices are from biennials, the second year. Yeah, so these generally speaking, we grow them like annuals and perennials. If you're just getting started vegetable gardening, perennial herbs are the most wonderful thing. You get them going, especially if you plant them in the spring and they have a whole year to get big, you just leave them there. You don't have to do anything, and they're very expensive to buy. So if you put them in, I have a perennial bed out in front of my house that sometimes I grow flowers in, but all of my perennial herbs are there. So when I make food, I walk out and I snip a bunch of stuff. I have a bay tree, I've got rosemary, tarragon, lavender, like all of those Mediterranean sage, all of those. And then it also is a bunch of plant material I can propagate from for plant sales, which is kind of nice. So like these are all way too close together in this pot. This is usually you buy this for $20 or whatever at the, it's like a pretty thing to have, but they can't live in here forever. I would tease these all apart and plant them in different areas. So the dill and the basil, these guys are just gonna die back. They're gonna put off seeds and die back. But then you can transplant, like this sage will last forever. The sage plant I have in my front yard, I think is like 6 years, at least 6 years old. I dug it up at a community garden that was shutting down. And I've moved in like 4 or 5 different places in my landscape. All I do is whack it back twice a year and it just lives there. It never goes away and it's beautiful to look at. But yeah, thyme and all of these, thyme, savory, all of those are perennials. They just come back. Sometimes some of them die back and come back up from the roots, but most of them are just there. Works in ground and in containers. Oh, mints. Don't put mint in the ground, y'all. It's bad. We do have one area of mint that's in a raised bed, and the way we weed it is rip everything off the outside. I have a big galvanized tub of mojito mint out in front of my house, but somebody put in some 4 little inch pot of chocolate mint at Briggs, and now it's like a scourge. It totally takes over all the pollinator beds. You can't get it out if you try. 2 or 3 times a year, we pull all of it out, it just comes right back. So don't put it directly into the ground if you can help it, because if you won't, there'll be a point where you just can never get rid of it. It's like bamboo. You can't get rid of it without a backhoe. Cool season vegetables. All right, we got 30 minutes. Let's cruise through this. So, okay, lettuce, the easiest, most wonderful vegetable. It's shallow rooted. It's not a very heavy feeder. You can grow head lettuce or leaf lettuces. I love leaf lettuces because you can go out and just pick, and it just keeps growing. I usually like to grow a Paris Island Cos. I'm sure some of you got some of those seeds. It's like a romaine, but it's much more like frondy and beautiful. The only time I cut a whole head of lettuce is if I'm going to someone's house and I want to bring them something, gorgeous. I'm like, here you go. Because like the romaine that you get in the store is like this. But when romaine grows, it's this massive plant and it's beautiful. So it's kind of nice to like make a veggie box and give it to people. But there's a lot, it's great when you come over and you're like, here you go. And it's beautiful. But they have a ton of like little type lettuces. Iceberg type head forming lettuces don't really do that great here. The leaf lettuces do much better here. So just keep that in mind. This is the sunflower family. Most of these, like the artichoke, the Jerusalem artichoke, these are in the same family, the sunflower family, but they grow in the summertime. But I just wanted to show you that like these are the same. And you can tell by the flower. When these put off flowers, they have that, sunburst look to them. Flowers usually indicate what family a vegetable is in. So, or any, botany. When you look at like, there's a book called Botany in a Day, which is really great. It talks about flowers and how they kind of like, you can tell that things are related by the flower that they create. This is chicory, also called endive. This is a cool season plant. It creates this root, and this is chicory root. The outside of this, they actually, during World War II, they used it as a substitute for coffee. And so if you go to Café du Monde in New Orleans, their coffee that they serve there, their coffee au lait, has, it's half chicory and half coffee, because they did that to stretch coffee and people got a taste for it. It also lowers the amount of caffeine that you're taking in. But that's where it comes from, is these roots right here. So, and endive's beautiful and delicious. So I like the cut and come again bit of lettuce. That's really wonderful. You can harvest it anytime. That's how they get baby lettuces. So as soon as they come up, they're edible, or you can wait till the leaves get huge. It's really up to you. Yes?
So I don't have a lot of room in the garden, but I do have a raised bed that's mainly perennials that this time of year is kind of like dying back, or I'm trimming it down. Could I plant lettuce in there?
Absolutely. And in fact, like if you still have some tomatoes or peppers or something that are in the garden and they're big, go ahead and seed a bunch of lettuce underneath them. Put a little, it's a tiny seed, so you just barely put it like right where your fingernail starts, a little 1/4 inch. Cover it with soil, water it good, and they'll all sprout. And then when your other stuff is crashing and burning, you pull it out and these all just get bigger. And when they're a little bit bigger, you can actually tease them apart and spread them out a little bit. You got to be a little bit delicate with them because the leaves are delicate, but the roots can handle being moved around. So this is a very big, wide family. I remember my pleasure and surprise when we first mowed the lawn the fall that we moved here. And I was like, are those onions? They're totally amazing that onions grow wild here in lawns. And I did pick some of them and like process some of them. They're a little bit crunchy because I think there's like dirt inside of them. But I had to just see that, if it was truly an onion, and it was. But onions are really easy to grow here. Their flower is a beautiful pom-pom. So we'll see some flowers there that are white. Sometimes there's pink. And there's also ornamental onions that people grow for the flowers. These are actually onion chives and their flowers before they put off seeds. You can like float that in a little drink. It looks beautiful. And they're also edible. You can put them in salads and things. This is elephant garlic. It's a cross between a shallot and it's a cross between shallot and garlic. So it's like closer to a shallot than it really is to garlic. There's a really amazing farmer at the State Farmers Market that grows elephant garlic locally, and it's fantastic. If you see this garlic in the store, this is from China and it's been bleached every single time. It's got this scab on it like that. If it has roots on it, you know that it's probably been grown in California. So if you want to plant garlic, you can put it in the fall and overwinter it till the spring. Most onions go in right now. And then you grow them through the next year and harvest them next summer if you want to create like a bulb onion or garlic. It takes up a lot of room and a lot of time. So I don't grow a lot of onions if they're not perpetual onions, because I'm going to take up 9 months of space in a place where I could create 100 pounds of food in that time, and onions are real cheap to buy. So usually I'll dedicate one bed and put garlic in it just so I can braid it, because I love to do that. But it's not that expensive to buy. If you do want to grow garlic locally, go to the farmer's market and get something that's grown within a 100-mile radius or 200-mile radius of here. Don't go to the store and buy garlic. First of all, this has been irradiated. You don't know what kind of diseases it's holding either. It probably won't sprout. It can stay on the shelf for like a year like this. It's not bad, it's food. It's just that, this right here, that's spring garlic. They pulled it up in the spring so they could eat the scapes of it, the beautiful greens on it. These will be real small and milky and delicious and turn purple when you peel them. But you let them mature like this and you can plant them. But you plant them like under the ground with the scab side down, and one clove will make a whole head of garlic. So you need to plant them in like a 4-inch block all the way around, a little 4-inch grid. But just buy it locally. Soft neck garlics tend to do better than hard neck garlics here. Out in the West, hard neck garlic is king. So you don't buy organic garlic from there and try to plant it. You're not going to get the success, and you could be importing diseases into your landscape. So just buy some at the farmer's market. Okay, one other thing I wanted to say. If you grow perpetual onions, I'll show you them at breaks. Just remind me, you never have to buy green onions again. You put them in once and let them grow for a little bit. I haven't bought green onions unless it was to cook for 100 people. I haven't bought them for my house in like 6 years because Kat Causey gave me some bulbs my first month in this job, and I stuck them in the ground. And now, rather than ripping them out, I go out and I cut them off at the ground, and they just keep growing. So I'll show you those, and those are just great to have. You just take up a corner. You don't really move them around. I mean, they stay right there and they just keep producing. Carrots are so beautiful. I love rainbow carrots so much. What I do is I get carrot seeds and I mix them together so they're all the different colors, and then I just spread them out across an area and let them all come up, and then I get like rainbow carrots. Carrots are just beautiful to grow. They also, this shows you that they're related to Queen Anne's lace. So this can be toxic to some people. Queen Anne's lace is a toxic plant. That's why some people, you see recipes for like carrot green pesto. Be really careful with that. If you want to make carrot green pesto, make it for you and your family. Don't make carrot green pesto and bring it to a potluck, because some people could be allergic to this. When you pick the greens for this, make sure the plant is small and the taproot has not started yet, and you're not going to have like the chemicals in the leaves that are going to be as potent. But it can cause reactions in some people, but it's mainly just the greens. When it photosynthesizes, it can cause issues in some people. Parsnips, another beautiful plant in the same family. Apiaceae, which I thought was the greatest pronunciation. I actually went and pronounced all of these this morning because I used to say them all the time without ever hearing them pronounced. And then I was like, well, let me just do these. I got this pronunciation app. It's awesome. It's going to be great when I go to my Spanish classes again. So anyway, there's lots of them in this family, and the celery, lots of herbs are in this family that's related to Queen Anne's lace. So the leaves look really similar. So that's why when people look at celery, they can't really tell the difference between celery and parsley in the greenhouse. So we'll go look at it today. But parsnips and carrots before sugar was widely available. The only thing you could get that was sweet were things like fruit in the summer and honey before sugar was widely available. So this was a great way to have sweetness in the winter time, because you could keep these over winter, and you could, when you roast these, they become much sweeter because you break down those long chain starches into sugars. And the smaller the carbon chain on a carbohydrate, the sweeter it is. That's why something is a mono or disaccharide. That's real sweet. Or like high fructose corn syrup, that's a disaccharide. It has two sugars in it that are bonded together. Some not. But then something like a potato, those molecules are the same as high fructose corn syrup, but they're huge long chains of them, so they taste like starch. So when you roast these, you can make cakes out of them and things like that, and they're actually sweet. I mean, not really with our taste now, because you can get like a soda or whatever whenever you want. This would not taste that sweet. But back in the day, it was all the rage, let me tell you. Let's see. Oh yeah, just be really careful when you're handling, oh, I cut myself right off there. When you're handling especially the leaves of parsnips, just wash your hands after or wear gloves, just in case you're a sensitive person. Not everybody is, but they can cause some sun sensitivity. But it's more concentrated in parsnip leaves than it is in carrot leaves. Celery. So this is selected for the roots in this family. This is selected for the stems in the same family. So that's kind of how this format is there's families of plants, and we have, sort of bred them as humans to, make them more tasty for us. And so in the Apiaceae family, the carrot family, celery is in the same family, but we bred it to consume the stems. So it's a biennial. It does take 120 days to harvest, but you can overwinter it, which is really nice. Having celery in the garden is great. I never cut the whole celery off. I just go and I break off what I need on the outside. I don't have to buy celery ever. I don't have to buy green onions ever. I usually have carrots growing in the garden, but there's an end to those. You pull them out, there's no more carrot. It's just the carrot you have in your hand. Celery is one of those things. It's like kale or something, or lettuce. You can pick from it for months if you just leave the inner, you never rip out the inner part. You break off the outer part, and the inner part keeps growing and pushing outwards, so you end up getting more and more stalks off of it. You can grow from seed or starts. Just like I said, the starts are like indestructible. I could not believe how rough we were with these things, and every one of them made it. This is leaf celery, where they mainly concentrate on the leaves. The stalks are very thin, and you can find this if you ever want to go. It's almost like a veg museum. Go to H Mart. They have, stuff from all over the world. It's beautiful. I Google stuff. I've been shopping for food my whole life. That's always been my main job, and I still find new stuff that I've never seen before, vegetable-wise, in H Mart. So you'll find leaf celery there. That's where they use it primarily for the leaves. If you let it go to seed, celery seed makes celery salt. This is an ingredient in things like Creole cooking, other kinds of Southern cooking, French cooking. So that's another product from this. Celeriac is it's sort of like an above ground stem. It's not a true root. And if you've ever cooked with celeriac, it's sort of like a mix between a really fibrous potato and celery. It's got a very strong celery flavor, but it chews like a potato. So it doesn't have this is like water and cellulose where you're like crunch and those cellulose fibers coming off of it. This is like soft on the inside. So if you ever get a chance to eat this, it's wonderful, and it's very easy to grow. So, blanched celery. You know how you get on the inside of a celery stalk and there's like those yellow white celeries on the inside? You can actually grow the whole stalk like that. You pile up dirt or straw around it so it can't really photosynthesize, and the inside, it doesn't develop those cellulose fibers that peel off. It's very tender and delicious and not very strong flavored. So there are some places that you can like Reading Market in Pennsylvania, there's a lady that's all she does is sell blanched celery in little containers for you to snack on. So it's kind of an old world thing. People don't do it that much anymore, but you can do it. Give it a go and learn how to do it. Okay, so these are some of our biennial herbs. These are the cool season ones, and these are some other cool season ones. Basically, parsley and dill will grow kind of through the summer, but we'll put off seeds when it gets really hot, but then you can start them again at the end of the summer. And same thing with fennel, but in between that's when basil grows. Basil is king for 3 months, and then all the other herbs are all the other months of the year. Except for your perennials grow year round. They're all the time. Just they taste better or worse at different times of the year. These guys all grow during cool times, and then during warm times, it's basically basil and shiso. Those are the only two that really do it. But you can grow cumin, coriander is the seed to cilantro, and we grow these like annuals. Usually when I grow parsley, I like the flat leaf parsley. Fennel, it grows like a weed. These are all super easy things to grow. You just throw seeds and that's what often I'll do is just strip the seeds and drop them where they're at. They'll all come up in a clump, and then I just tease them apart and spread them out. Very low maintenance. Okay, this guy, these are the chennapods. It's the amaranth family. Chennapods, spinach, beets, quinoa, chard, they're all in the same family. If you grow amaranth or quinoa in your garden, it gives you a lot of glorious visual interest. But once you grow it, it will always be there. You will be weeding it for the rest of your life because that seed's real small. You're never going to grow this to make quinoa because you don't have the machinery to separate wheat from the chaff here. It's a big old mess, but it's beautiful and birds love it. You can harvest this anytime. Spinach overwinters better than anything else. Like I usually just thick seed it, it all comes up, I tease it apart and spread it out, and then I leaf mulch underneath it. I harvest all winter, all the way through the spring. I grow this for like 6-7 months straight. By April, I'm so sick of spinach, I can't look at it. There's so much, because it's the green we eat all the time, because it's there. That and cilantro. Cilantro loves to be frozen. It's fine, it doesn't care, it grows along the ground right next to spinach. So it's difficult to sprout. I recommend soaking it ahead of time. You do get, but it does like cool soil temperatures, so people are seeding now, because that's what this thing says, and then stuff doesn't come up because it's a little bit hot. So if you like kind of sprout it in your house when it's cooler, it'll do a lot better. So the oxalates I was talking about, if you're prone to kidney stones, eat this stuff in the winter time. It doesn't produce that many oxalates in the winter. If you've had a lot of kidney stones in your life, you want to avoid beets, chard, and spinach when it's hot, because they put off a lot of oxalates. It's how they're fighting pests. But if you eat them in the winter, they have almost none of that flavor at all. That's when they're like soft and beautiful. If you eat spinach from the grocery store, you barely taste the oxalates, especially if it's the baby spinach in the containers, because they grow it in a cool and moist environment, so it never gets that development of oxalates that like taste. Chard or silver beet, I don't even like the taste of this, but I grow it all the time. I mean, look at that. Like, come on. It's like pretty like flowers. It's beautiful. Really rich in lots of vitamins and minerals. It's beautiful. Sometimes I'll like use the leaves and like roll stuff up in it and steam it. You can use it like a grape leaf kind of. Plus, when you roll these up and you put them on a white plate with all these veins of color going down the middle, you look like a gourmet chef, but you didn't really do anything. And they grow like weeds, and they're free. So like, I can't believe what people pay for this stuff in the grocery store. It's like $5 for 10 leaves of this stuff, and you can't really kill it if you tried. So this is one of the great things to start with. Beets, you might have a problem getting to sprout or to make it, but not beets, they just grow. And if they look awful, you cut them off and they just come right back. So this is a great thing to start with. Again, anything in this family except for spinach is going to be multiple seeds in a seed pod, so you want to just go ahead and sprout them or soak them first. You'll have 4 or 5 of them come up in the same spot. When they get a little bigger, just tease them apart and spread them out. Beets, look how glorious. I mean, that's so beautiful. So you can harvest these anytime. You can definitely eat the greens. You can cook them just like chard or spinach. You'll see in the grocery store, if you ever you see that with the greens, people twist the greens off and throw them, and it's like you're throwing away half the food of that thing. A lot of people don't know that you can eat the greens of them. Again, sprout them. And majority actually of the sugar in the United States that we produce is from GMO sugar beets. So it's in the same family, the chenopods. We've developed them. The GMO is basically to take these dips out of them like this, so that there's not, so when you pull it out, there's like, the dirt doesn't really stick to it, because sugar beets on their own have just these jagged, nasty crevices in them, and they're hard to clean. But anyway, our vegetable beets are like 1% or something of the beets that we grow in the United States. Okay, we're on our last little family here. My favorite family, the brassicas. So we were talking about how like tomatoes are like the fussy girl at the school and like has to have everything her way and doesn't like to get her hair wet and is just a big bunch of trouble and a narcissist. This is the kid that gets along with all the groups of kids. He's hanging out with like the nerds, he's hanging out with the skaters, like this family just gets along. Goes along to get along with everybody. So easy to grow. You can seed them and spread them apart in a nursery bed like we were talking about. You can start them. Some of them can tolerate heat a little bit better than other ones, and some of them freeze it solid in the wintertime, and you just let the sun come out, and they thaw right out. They have their own. Antifreeze. So this brassica family, these were selected for the leaves. Okay, there's some that are selected for flowers, some for stems, some for seeds, and we'll talk about that in the next few slides, and then we'll let you go. So these are technically biennials. We grow them as annuals. I grow them in the fall all the way through the spring. Some of them don't do as well when they're frozen, and those are the ones that, if you see something that says Sicilian kale or Italian da-da-da-da, you know that it's really not gonna like the winter time. It'll like the fall and spring, but it won't like the winter time. So this is dino kale or lacinato kale or black kale, dino kale. Those are all named for the same kind of kale. This is delicious and super easy to grow. Makes the best kale chips out of all the kales, by the way. It will live through the winter, but you need to cover it, and it'll look terrible when it comes out in the spring. But as soon as it warms up, it'll perk right up again. But the leaves, when they get frozen and then they thaw, it's sort of like putting a tomato out in the sun too soon and scorches it. It really does get scorched on the outer leaves, and it like gets all curled up, and it's kind of like, ah. And then it gets warm, and you cut all that off, and it's like, oh, it's like glorious and perfect. These guys, though, love it frozen. That is a Russian kale. So red Russian kale, it can freeze. If your kales freeze, don't touch them. Just let the sunshine on them, and they will thaw out, and they'll come right back to life. But if you go out there like, oh man, it's messed up, you'll burst the cell walls of this while it's frozen, and it'll never recover. So just leave them alone, they'll be fine, okay? You can leave them uncovered, but if you really want to harvest all winter long and have them gorgeous all the time, cover them with a gossamer row cover, those floating row covers that I'll show you when we go to Briggs, and you'll harvest all winter long. But you want to get them in the ground soon so that they're full size when they go into winter, because they will grow slower. And you need more, because the day is shorter, you need more leaves, solar panels, to be able to continue the growth. If you start it like this, in December, it's never going to get very big, and then the spring will come and it will get big. But if you want to be able to harvest through the winter time all year, then these have to be full size when they go into the freezing temperatures. Collard greens, I think I've got like 6 varieties of collard greens going at Briggs. There are so many different kinds of collard greens. Some of them form a head, some of them form leaves. The head forming type don't really do well over the winter, like cabbage doesn't do good over winter. The leaf types do better. Yeah, so you can grow Georgia collards or whatever. You can overwinter these. They don't look very happy, and they're a little bit leathery when they get cold, but you can grow these over the winter time as well. So all the way through to spring. I love a purple kale. This family has the ability to create anthocyanins, which are the same pigments that exist in blueberries and things, red cabbage, things like that. Different than beets. Beets are betaines, which is a whole other ball of wax, but they're all like very powerful antioxidants. They're not vitamins and minerals, but they are phytonutrients. So it's a whole other class of very beneficial chemicals, reducing cancer and blood pressure and all those things. So that's why they always recommend that you eat a rainbow of a lot of different colors. But things like purple are very hard to get in the diet. There's not that many purple naturally occurring foods. So I usually try to grow at least one scarlet kale or a scarlet lettuce or something like that. So I'm getting that into my diet all the time. And then this is a dwarf Scotch kale. Again, it's higher up in Europe. This can freeze solid and doesn't even care. It thaws right out in the daytime again. So isothiocyanate and sulforaphanes are the things that you consume that actually are the active ingredients that also reduce a lot of incidences of cancer and things like that. That's also what causes them to smell a little bit like nasty when you cook them. Is this smell right here are these sulfur-containing chemicals, but they're actually super, super beneficial for us. And brassicas have a lot of this. Kohlrabi, same thing. You can eat the greens. This is the same species as this. This is Brassica oleracea, all of these. This is Brassica oleracea, but we've selected it for the stems. So one time there was a collard plant that had an extra wide stem on it, and we grew, kept growing that one and selected for it to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we grow these big guys like this. It's the same as if you eat broccoli. If you've been twisting off the stem and throwing the stem away, you're throwing away a lot of food. If you peel the stem, the inside of the stem is really delicious. It's like you can eat it raw, it's crispy. I like it actually better than the flour. But yeah, you can eat the leaves, you cook them just like collard greens, and this is the stem that you can peel and put in crudité or whatever you want. All of these taste better with a little bit of frost, and they all taste pretty bitter when it gets hot. So, because it's truly a cool season vegetable. And you'll hear Southerners say it like, oh, there's been a frost on them when I hand out like tons of colors, like, ooh, these have had a frost on them. It means that they're gonna be sweeter, because those like real pungent sulforaphane chemicals, those are chemicals that the plant creates to ward off pests. And so the hotter it gets, there's more pests, so they make more of those chemicals. So when it's cooler, there's no pests to really attack them. They don't make that many of those chemicals. Okay, this one is selected for the flower. So this is also Brassica oleracea. These are all different kinds of cauliflower. So I mean, look at these gorgeous colors. Like I'll grow white cauliflower, but in order to get white cauliflower, you actually have to cover it with its leaves. That's blanching. You're preventing it from, if you want a bright white head of cauliflower, every bright white head of cauliflower you've bought in the grocery store has been blanched. Crews go through, they cover up the head with its big frondy leaves, and it won't photosynthesize, and you get that snowball cauliflower. But if you leave it in the sun, it looks just like this green one. So This is Romanesca. I love this one. I mean, look at that fractile pattern. It's so beautiful. It's just so interesting looking. I always grow Romanesca because it's very hard to find in the grocery store, and that's like $6 right there at Whole Foods. So I just grow it. Purple, and then all of the brassicas, whether they are Asian brassicas or European brassicas, these are European, have this 4-petal yellow flower. So just so you know, that is what a brassica makes. Okay, so this is actually Brassica, one of them is Brassica napus and Brassica rapa. This is not Oleracea anymore. We're selecting for the roots. So these are radish and turnips. Turnips are delicious. They also get sweeter when you cook them. All of the leaves are edible on all of these. People don't know. They're like, oh, radish, and you take the leaves and throw it away. My favorite way to cook radishes is to just like have them or quarter them, roast them in like a 400-degree oven for 10-15 minutes, finish them off with a little oil and lemon, salt and pepper, and in the last 5 minutes of cooking, tear up these leaves and throw it on top and they'll wilt. So you get like, this is all very beneficial to eat and really delicious. I just won't eat them raw, they're too peppery for me, but that's me. Watermelon radishes are my favorite because they really, when these can photosynthesize, it truly looks like a watermelon that you're eating. You put black sesame seeds on them and they look like a watermelon. Daikon radishes are excellent for breaking up hard soils. So if you have soil that becomes compacted, you plant a bunch of, daikon is like a jackhammer. It drives down in and opens up soils that are compacted. So this is a great thing. It's actually, a lot of farmers will grow this as a cover crop too. So you can actually yank this out and eat them or let them die in the soil and they'll enrich the soil and they also fight nematodes, which is really nice. But you can eat the greens. These are like the cherry bell radishes. These come up in 30 days. These are so wonderful to grow like for schools and stuff like that because you put a crop in and you get a crop in 30 days. I usually mix, I love the rainbow ones. I mix these and carrot seeds together so they all come up, and when these come out, the seeds for the carrots are, the starts are real small, and then they fill in the space. So you can like double up the space and get twice the crop in the same space if you want to, because this only takes 30 days and a carrot takes 100 days, and it also sometimes takes 2 weeks to sprout. So you can, like if you just have a small area, double up your crops and you'll get kind of like a longer growing time. Okay, this is our last slide. Perfect. Sorry guys, I'm a little late. Okay, these are Brassica napus, rapa, and juncea. Okay, these are, I could do a 2-hour talk on this alone, just this family and how it's split across the world and made different things. But when you think about like, these are all brassicas. These bok choy, tatsoi, gailon, all of those things that you can get in different Asian restaurants. Tatsoi, bok choy, tatsoi is beautiful. It's this tiny little rosette like this. Really, you would cut the whole head off of this thing because it's so pretty. But it's like a mini bok choy. It's got little like white stems, but it's about this tall and this big around. That's really beautiful and super easy to grow. Mizuna is my favorite mustard. It is long and frondy. If you ever, who am I thinking of? Taka, the guy that we were talking about earlier that makes some beautiful Japanese food, he always grows purple and green, and whenever he brings them to the plant sale, I usually buy them from him. But it's this beautiful frondy green that you can eat raw, so it's not that spicy. I grow it every fall. This is traditional bok choy. We also make mustard out of this. Mustard seed, that's how we make mustard. It's a brassica. So, but it's also canola oil. So, does anybody know the name of the seed that makes canola oil? Rapeseed. Like, this is in an industry called rape oil. Like, nobody was going to buy that. So they renamed it Canadian oil, canola, because that's where most of it is grown. This is a whole ball of wax right here, like with health-wise and politically, GMO, land ownership, corporate behavior is tied all up in this, and we don't have time to talk about it. But bad corporate behavior. Anyway, farmers. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that your broccoli is related to your canola oil, and it can be made into biodiesel that goes into your car. It's made into plastics. It's on your hot dog. It's a very diverse group of plants. Yes? Yes?
Does the grapeseed flower, it's yellow, is it not?
Grapeseed is different. Are you talking about, rapeseed? Yes, yeah, it's the same. It looks just like this. Yeah, you'll see fields of it when you drive
Yeah.
by. It's exactly it. It makes a
In Europe, they've just got like acres and acres of it, and they use it for the mustards. But that's why that when you get a burn and you put yellow mustard, just like straight up French's mustard on the burn, you won't get any blister and the paint goes away immediately. But supposedly it's the medicinal properties from the grapeseed flower
Yeah,
that make it see yellow.
because there's like grapeseed oil, but that's from grapes.
That's right.
And this is rapeseed, which is a terrible name, but it comes from Brassica rapa. I know it's because it's supposed to be, you know, it's Brassica rapa, so that's why they call it rapeseed, is because of that. But it still sounds terrible. Questions, anybody?